At St. Peter's Secondary School, fear had a name, Madam Amaka. She was a mathematics teacher, chubby and stern. Her presence alone was enough to send chills down the students' spine. But what terrified them the most were the strange disappearances. Every term, at least one student who struggled with mathematics would vanish. The school claimed they had transferred or dropped out, but the students knew better. The victims were always the weakest in maths, the one who failed Madam Amaka's impossible tests. One day they would be in class, struggling with equations. The next, their seats will be empty, their names erased from the register as if they had never existed. Nobody dared to ask any questions. Chuka, a struggling student, had always feared mathematics. No matter how hard he tried, the numbers never made sense. And now, after failing his latest test with a miserable 12 of 100, he knew he was in danger. His best friend Emeka leaned close. "Chuka, you need to pass the next test," he whispered, "or you might be next." Chuka swallowed hard, remembering Chidinma, the girl who used to sit behind him. She had failed 3 tests in a row. One evening, she left school and never returned. Her parents searching everywhere, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. That night, Chuka stayed up late to memorize formulas. But when Madam Amaka handed out another test the next day, his mind went blank. When the results came back, his heart sank. 12 out of 100 again. Madam Amaka's cold eyes locked onto him. "See me after school," she said. Trembling, Chuka entered Madam Amaka's office after school. The room smelled of old books and chalk dust. She sat behind her desk, her long fingers tapping the wooden surface. "You are dull, Chuka," she said softly. "Dull students do not belong in my class." She stood up and walked to a large dusty chalkboard at the back of the room. With a piece of white chalk, she scribbled an equation. X plus Y. "Solve it," she commanded. Chuka had no idea what to do. He hesitated. Madam Amaka sighed and whispered something in a strange language. The room darkened, the numbers on the chalkboard began to glow. The walls shook and a terrifying force pulled at Chuka. Before he could scream, the floor beneath him opened, swallowing him into nothingness. A second later, he was gone. Madam Amaka dusted her hands, turned to the class register, and drew a red line through Chuka's name. The next morning, Emeka noticed his friend's empty seat. "Where is Chuka?" he asked. Madam Amaka didn't even blink. "Who is Chuka?" she replied. But Emeka was not fooled. He knew what he had seen. Chuka had walked into Madam Amaka's office and never came out. Determined to uncover the truth, he sneaked into the school's record office that night, searching through the old files. He was horrified to discover that none of the missing students had any records. It was as if they had never existed. Then he found something even stranger. An old student list from 30 years ago. One name stood out, Amaka Ezinne. His blood ran cold. Madam Amaka had been a student at St. Peter's, but how was she still here, looking as young as ever? The next day, Emeka visited his grandmother, who was once a student of St. Peter's. He narrated everything, and the moment he mentioned Madam Amaka's name and showed her a picture of her, Emeka's grandmother screamed in shock. She revealed that Madam Amaka had been a classmate of hers and that she had been mercilessly teased and humiliated by her peers. It was that Madam Amaka's presence at St. Peter's School was not a coincidence. She had a purpose, a mission that drove her to linger in the earthly realm. As a teenager, she had endured the cruel taunts and bullying of her peers. The constant humiliation and insults had taken a devastating toll on her mental health. She sank deep into depression, feeling lost and alone, with no escape from pain and suffering. In a tragic turn of events, Madam Amaka took her own life, seeking an end to the anguish that had consumed her. But her spirit did not rest. It remained trapped in the earthly world, reliving the memories of her past and the pain she had endured. And yet, in death, Madam Amaka found a new purpose. She was determined to take away students who were struggling just like she had. She was keeping them trapped in an unknown place, stuck in a limbo just like her. Her actions were motivated by a twisted sense of empathy. She knew what it was like to feel lost and alone, and she wanted to spare others from the pain of the world. But in doing so, she was condemning them to the same fate she had suffered, a life of isolation, trapped between worlds. Emeka was shocked at this revelation. His grandmother told him that for spiritual beings like her, he should tread carefully and that her power lies in a chalkboard. Destroy it and she will face the consequences of her evil. That night, Emeka and his friends Ada and Tunde sneaked into Madam Amaka's office. The room was cold and silent. The chalkboard loomed over them, covered in strange equations that glowed faintly. Emeka raised a hammer. His hands shook as he prepared to strike. "You shouldn't be here," a chilling voice said. They turned. Madam Amaka stood at the door. "You think you can destroy me?" she hissed. The shadows in the room twisted and moved unnaturally. Emeka smashed the hammer into the chalkboard. A deafening scream filled the air. Madam Amaka shrieked, her body convulsing. The walls trembled and the voices of lost students echoed through the air. "She is weakening," Ada shouted. Tunde grabbed the chair and smashed the board again. Madam Amaka's youthful face began to crack, her body aging rapidly. With one final ear-piercing scream, she collapsed into a pile of dust. As the dust settled, a miracle happened. One by one, the missing students reappeared, dazed, confused, but alive. Chuka stumbled forward, eyes wide with shock. "What happened?" Emeka grinned. "You just escaped from hell, my guy." The next morning, news spread. Madam Amaka had vanished. As the news of the students' appearances and the disappearance of Madam Amaka spread, parents rushed to the school, demanding answers and the safe return of their children. The school administration, realizing the gravity of the situation, was powerless to contain the outrage. Within days, the school was shut down and every student was withdrawn by their parents. The once thriving school was abandoned, its classrooms left empty and silent. The students, though shaken, were finally safe. Chuka, Emeka and his friends realized the implications of bullying and the long-term effects it has on students. And in Madam Amaka's case, the bullying had triggered a desire for revenge that had ultimately consumed her.